What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Mohawk Motors. My name is Jason. So, got a project today. Admittedly, I have been procrastinating, but I'm running out of time, so I got to get this done. Hopefully, we're going to get everything ready to finally be able to fix my Jeep up in Maine. As you can see, I've got two axles here on jack stands. We're going to be doing a little bit of work to those to hopefully make sure that I have everything I need to get the Jeep put back together while we're up there. I've got two versions of a Dana 30 front axle here. This one here is a high pinion Dana 30. This came out of the Zombie Jeep. You guys remember the Zombie Jeep? Yeah, this axle came out of that Jeep. And the whole reason I had gotten that Jeep was for the axles, because I needed a new front and I knew it would be cheaper for me to buy a whole Jeep, sell what I don't need, and keep what I do. And it did. I wound up keeping the axles out of that Jeep essentially for free. I actually made a little bit of money on the deal. I came out about $100 ahead after I sold and scrapped the stuff I didn't want, and I have my axle here, as well as the matching rear. Now, this axle is a low pinion Dana 30 front. I picked this one up off Facebook Marketplace for 50 bucks. Now, all I really want from this axle is the leaf spring purchase, and maybe some of the other odds and ends. I think I'm going to steal the outer knuckles and maybe the axle shafts. But the rest of it, I'm probably not going to use. Now, the reason that I'm not just going to use the low pinion Dana 30, it is in better shape. I don't know the gear ratio in it, and I also don't remember the gear ratio in the axles in the Jeep right now, the broken axles. So my best bet to make sure that I'm not mismatched on gear ratios is just to use these two axles out of the Zombie Jeep, and that way I'll know I have two axles with the same gear ratio. I'm not going to have any problems there. And I have the time now, I hope, to make what upgrades I need to make to this high pinion Dana 30 before we go. This axle from the differential and this upper control arm mount out, it looks like the thing was in the bottom of the ocean. I mean, the coil spring perches are so rusted I can put my finger through them. I don't have any faith in them lasting any amount of time, especially seeing how crusty they are where the shock absorbers mount. I do not think they're going to hold up. And I also bought upgraded, thicker, lower control arm mounts because I'm pretty confident that was the original mode of failure that led to the ultimate demise of the axle currently in the Jeep. So we're going to steal the coil spring mounts and shock mounts off of that axle, transplant them onto this axle, and then, like I said, grab off whatever other good parts, better parts from that one onto this one to get this one as good to go as possible for when we go up there. Okay, well, I've got one bracket completely removed. I may or may not have gotten a little deeper than I should have in a few spaces, so just welded those up. Now I've got a nice clean axle tube ready to go to get this bracket onto. So what I'm gonna do next is get this axle to a position that I can get a measurement. And I want to measure the pinion angle, and then I'm going to measure the spring mount angle. And basically what I want to be able to do is make sure that I match up the angle of the spring mount on this tube in relation to the ball joints. Duplicate that angle on this one in relation to the ball joints. So I'll get all geared up and then I'll show you exactly what I'm going to do. So I've got my axle set up here and I'm measuring right on this flat part. It shows me 0 degrees on my magnetic base angle finder here. And then I come over to the pinion. I set my angle finder on my pinion here, and it's showing me 81 degrees. Now when I do that on the other axle, you can see 0 on the flat part, and then the same 81 at the pinion. So that tells me they're set up to have the pinion angle the same whether it's high or low pinion. What that also gives me enough information to do is now I can cut this mount off of the axle. I'll unbolt the steering stabilizer and the track bar just to make it a little easier to work with, but I'll get this mount cut off of the axle, removing as little from the mount itself as I can. I'll try to just cut right through the middle of this weld with a cutoff wheel, and then I'll be able to bring it over, sit it on this axle. I'll keep my pinion angle at 81 degrees right where it is, and then I'll get that flat part to 0 degrees to match where it is now. And then I'll measure my distance from the back of the knuckle right here to the inside of the mount to make sure I have it the right width. And that should let me get it back where it belongs. I only really have to worry about those 2 dimensions. Right distance as far as center line of the axle, and then right angle as far as tipped forward and backward. And then I'll burn it on. So I'm gonna do it one at a time. I'm gonna finish getting the passenger side mount moved over, welded up, ready to go. And then I'll essentially repeat the process on the driver's side mount. I've got my passenger side bracket, cut it off, cleaned it up as best I could with the grinder. I've got a mark here where I need the edge of my bracket to be. Just gonna line that up. And now, because it's torch cut, I need to space it off the axle just a little bit, you know. I lost a little bit of material when I cut that off with the torch. So I need to give myself just a tiny bit of space. I'm probably not going to have enough hands for this. I need to get the welder ready to go so I can tack it once I have it. All right. Now I just need to weld it up. Alright, before I fully weld this thing, I want to get my lower control arm mount tacked into place as well. I bought these on Amazon. They're the same as the stock mounts, they're just made out of 1/4-inch plate instead of little real flimsy steel. And I think this is going to be a substantial upgrade. Alright. Now I Alright, I'm picking up, it's the next day, I'm picking up where I left off. I've got this side of the axle tube all cleaned up. I've got my bracket from the donor axle all cleaned up. So now I need to weld this second bracket on. At this point, all I really want to do, make sure I do, is get it the right distance away from the knuckle, and get this surface parallel with this surface. So I just want to have those matching. And then I'll get it welded on there. Should be relatively simple. Suspension perches, mounts are all welded up, ready to go. Pumped about that. Now the next thing I'm going to do, these brakes are crusty as heck. These outer steering knuckles are crusty as heck. The heads are all but rusted off of the unit bearing bolts, which I don't want to have to fight with that if I'm ever out on a trail and break a shaft. So I'm going to get the outers disassembled and taken off and swap these outers on. These are way less rusty. The bolts still have all 12 points. So I'm basically going to take the best parts off of this and put them onto this. Like I said, so if I'm ever out on the trail and break an axle shaft, I don't have to try to fight with miserable, corroded, I can't get it apart pieces. I'm also draining the gear oil out. I have a Spartan locker. I left it in Maine, which was silly, but I have a Spartan locker up there that I'm going to install on this when we get there. So I figured I'd drain the oil out here so I don't have to try to deal with it when I'm up there. So I also want to see what gears these are. I think it's 355s, which is an upgrade over what the Jeep has in it. It currently has 308s in it, so almost a half a point better gearing would be nice too. All right, everybody, I'm done with the front. I'm calling it for the night. Here's where we're at. So I've got the less rusty knuckles put on. I chose the best bearings and axle shafts and put those in. Now my axle up there has calipers and brakes on it, which I think are new. I put those on, you know, when I took it up there. So I don't think I'll need these, but I'll have them in case I do. I've got the steering linkage on. Again, I'm pretty sure mine is still good and I have actually upgraded it, but I have this in case I need it and in case it got messed up when things were broken. And then same on this side. Got my new beefier lower control arm mounts put on. My new coil spring and shock mounts put on. And I took the diff cover off, verified. It does have 355 gears in there. I cleaned it all out. Cleaned all the old RTV off the cover and the housing. So that way when we get up there, I can just pull the axle shafts real quick, put my Spartan locker in, and then put the whole thing back together, seal it, and fill it with oil. And this will be ready to go to replace the jacked up axle currently under the Jeep. Yeah, I got a little bit to do to the rear axle tomorrow. Moving right along on these axles. Got the rear in. Now this is a Chrysler 8 1/4 rear. The XJs had 2 rear axle options as far as I know. The Dana 35, I'm sorry, or the 8 1/4. Everybody I've talked to says the 8 1/4 is a little bit stronger, so I'm glad it has that. But like so many Jeeps I've come across, it's got an open diff in it. So I'm gonna pull the spider gears out. I'm gonna show you how I weld up an open diff. So I'm gonna pop the axle shafts out. It's real easy. You remove the bolt retaining the center pin, remove the center pin, push your axle shafts in to remove the C-clips, and then you should be able to get all the spider gears out. So I'm gonna get those out. I'll show you how I weld them up, and then we'll put that back together. I'm gonna see if I have the stuff to replace these brake lines because they look pretty crusty, especially right over here. So I'm gonna try to get those replaced if I have the stuff to do it. If not, we're just gonna run it. I'm gonna pull the drums off just to make sure everything inside of there looks like it's in working order, because I do want to have working brakes. You can see I've got all my internal components from the differential out. Now, each side gear will have a flat washer behind it, at least in every differential I've ever taken apart. And each spider gear will have a cupped washer behind it. Now, before you do any welding anywhere, make sure you get those out of the way, especially if you're doing it the way I'm gonna do it, because they will warp, and then that will put excess pressure on your gears. Now the next step is, the way I do this, I'm only going to be welding on the side gears. So it reduces on the amount of stuff I have to clean. I don't have to clean all these other parts. I just need to get the 2 side gears really, really clean. So I'm gonna go in and have dinner, let the 2 side gears get completely dry and clean, all of the brake clean evaporated off of them. So I'm not worried about that when I'm welding. And then when I come back out, I'll show you how I weld these things and explain a little more in depth of why I do it this way. So, all right everybody, I'm back from dinner. I'm working on my temporary welding table here. I'm gonna get this differential welded up, right? So this is how I like to do it. It's worked really well for me. I've done it in dozens of vehicles. I've never had a problem. But I take my 2 side gears that my axle shafts spline into. All I'm gonna do is create a bind. I'm not actually gonna weld the whole differential into one big solid chunk like you see a lot of people do. What I'm gonna do is weld up opposite gear teeth. So I'm gonna weld this top tooth here, or valley rather, and this bottom valley here. And what that's gonna do is, when the axle shafts spin at a different speed, they're gonna go opposite of each other until that pinion gear hits the filled in tooth. And then it's gonna bind. And that bind will lock both shafts together, spinning at the same speed. It works really well for me. I've never had a problem, like I said, and it's way easier to get a good weld on this nice, clean side gear than it is to try to weld up the whole thing inside the differential. It only takes a couple minutes to pull the things out, get them nice and clean, and get them welded up well. So there's lots of ways to weld up a differential. This is how I like to do it. and it works. Don't be afraid to get it nice and hot. You really want to get a good fill on that tooth. Almost forgot. It does help. Put something inside of your splines here so you don't fill your splines up with spatter. Go. Alright, so now I'm going to let those cool way off, and then I'll clean them up. I'll brush off the outside, make sure I don't have any extra bubbles floating around. You can see on this one, I overflowed a little bit, so I'll get that polished off. And then I'll knock the little spatter bubbles off of it, and it'll be ready to be reassembled. Alright everybody, so I've got my welded up side gears back in place, pinion gears back in place, everything cocked, locked, and ready to rock inside the differential here. I've got my bead of silicone around the outside. I'm just letting it set for a few seconds before I put the cover on and tighten it down. The only other thing I'm going to do to this thing, oh, I also made new brake lines. The other ones, literally as soon as I touched them, I could see that they were going to leak. So I just made new brake lines real quick. I had some 3/16 brake line laying around here from something, so I threw that on there. And I'm going to pop out the little parking brake cable ends because I'll need those out of the way to connect it to my Jeep up in Maine. And I think that's it. I think then this thing will be ready to go. I'll fill it up with oil tomorrow morning once the RTV has set. Yeah, and then she'll be ready. All right, everybody, that's it. This portion of this project is complete. Rear axle is sealed up, filled with oil, cocked, locked, and ready to rock. All I'll have to do is bolt it in. The front axle, like I said, I'll get the Spartan locker put in when I get up there, seal it up, fill it with oil, get it bolted in, and then that'll be ready to go too. But that's going to be a separate video. I have to get some rest. We're leaving tomorrow afternoon, driving up overnight, and I need to be well rested to do that. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you again to all the subscribers. Everybody's commenting, interacting. I love seeing it. Thank you so much for the support. And until the next video, everybody, take care. I'm pumped. This thing should go. It should honestly go a lot better than it did before. And hopefully I can get more than 15 or 20 minutes out of it before I break it this time.